My husband, 32, and I, 27, had a great marriage. The friendship and love in our union was so glaring, and I was so sure nothing could come between us. Well, that was until we moved to a new house in a different neighborhood. We didn't know anyone there. We were lucky to have nice neighbors. We heard a knock on our door shortly after we moved in. We were curious as to who it could be since we didn't know anyone there yet. It turned out to be the couple next door. They were so nice to my husband and I. Conversations with them were so easy. One would almost think we were old friends. Since we were new in the area, they volunteered to show us around, help us get familiar with the neighborhood, and even answer whatever questions we may have. From just neighbors, we became acquaintances, and the four of us started hanging out at least once a week. By my guess, they were close to my husband and I in age, and we shared common interests too. We rotated the hangouts between houses, and on days when we didn't feel like staying indoors, we went out together. On one of those nights of dining out, I noticed the husband's eyes lingering on me. I'd admit I have caught him looking at me when he thought no one was looking, and whenever we made eye contact, he'd quickly take his eyes off of me. However, on this day, even after we made it, he didn't take his eyes off me. He gave me looks that's only appropriate for one's love interest. I knew I should have said something, stopped him right there from having any funny ideas, but I didn't. Instead, I reveled in the attention. It made me feel desirable, and I always looked forward to our hangouts because of it. For weeks, it was nothing but looks. No words from him at all. Fueled by the desire his looks stirred up in me, I decided to ask him why he looks at me, and without mincing words, he told me he wanted me to tell I did too. I didn't deny it. I allowed my eyes to show everything I was feeling, and that was how our affair started. We couldn't get enough of it. It was like the looks we shared made our emotions pent up. Our being together just let it all out without restraint. We knew what we were doing was wrong, but neither of us was willing to stop. It became an addiction we didn't want to let go of. We tried as much as possible to be discreet. Our hangouts continued, and our spouses didn't notice anything. An affair with my neighbor made me feel so good and desirable. I could almost swear I was 16 again, hanging out with my crush and just doing the things a teenager would do. In a bid not to get caught, we made sure to always meet up in hotels. Even though his wife was rarely at home during the day, we made it a rule not to make use of his house for fear of being caught. On this day, however, we broke that. His wife had gone on a work trip, so we thought the chances of her walking in on us were 0 to 1. My husband had gone to work too. I went over to his house. Sadly, life had other plans for us. After feeling satiated, we slept so we didn't hear the front door open. We didn't hear footsteps. And we didn't hear the bedroom door open too, until a scream interrupted. It was his wife. Her work trip ended early, and she wanted to surprise her husband by coming home unannounced. At that moment, I hated her and whatever company she worked at for being so incompetent at making a work trip last as long as it ought to last for. She called me all sorts of names, almost got physical with me if not for her husband that restrained her. I tried to look around for my clothes, get dressed and leave her and her husband to sort it out, but she stopped me. She bolted the door, called my husband, and told him to come home immediately to see something. She said she wouldn't allow me to go anywhere until my husband arrived. I started begging her then, because I didn't want my husband to meet me like that, naked except for the duvet draped around me in our neighbor's bedroom. And that was exactly how my husband met me. He needed no words or explanation to know what happened. He looked at me with disappointment in his eyes, and without saying a word, he stormed out. I ran after him, called out his name, but he wouldn't even turn to look at me for a minute. I went back into my neighbor's bedroom, hurriedly wore my clothes, and ran after my husband. I met him, seated in our living room, head bent with his hands on either side of his head. I knelt down beside him, begged him with tears streaming down my cheek. When he eventually sat up to look at me, gone was the look of disappointment. Instead, he looked at me like I was a pile of shit before leaving me to go into one of the rooms. That night, he didn't sleep beside me, and when he finally talked to me in the morning, he said he couldn't believe I could do something like that with our neighbor. I begged him and I told him it was just a stupid mistake that'll never happen again. I allowed myself to be carried away just that one time, but he shouldn't throw away what we have because of that. We could talk about it, even try to go to therapy, but he said that he'd rather die than go to therapy with a slut. According to him, I was the problem, not him. I knew I did wrong, but I expected him to forgive me because it was something I had never done before, but he just wouldn't reason with me. I never expected him to be that callous. He hasn't said anything about divorce, just goes around the house acting like I'm not there. I wonder how he does this when his refusal to talk to me has been killing me slowly. I need to go back to how we once were before I messed up. I need to know how I can get my husband's love, attention, and respect back, because I don't think I can continue this way. Edit. I overheard him talking on the phone with an attorney. He's filing for divorce. I'm officially in panic mode right now. I don't know how to stop this from happening. Story 2. I cheated on my husband not once, but twice. Here's the story. We have been married for 13 years and have 2 kids. We are both 34. Somewhere along the way, things got stale, as they do after you have kids, get comfortable in your roles with each other, etc. In this staleness, my husband became married to his work. He's very good at what he does, and making money. I know at first he was making a better life for me and my kids, but at one point, it became about his success and how far he could go. I've always appreciated his work ethic and desire to provide for us, and he was extremely good at it. He began pushing us away and had even gone as far as to say he wasn't sure if he was in love with me, but just comfortable with our relationship. I didn't read too much into that at first because I knew that this must be something all long-term couples go through, but it began to weigh on me. I threw myself at him. I bought lingerie, I made little surprises through the day for him, I texted love notes, blah blah blah. I begged for counseling, but he refused time and again. And then I realized he was married to his job. He was out of town half the time, and when he was home, he was firmly planted on the couch, playing video games or surfing Reddit. He gets a job offer that will move us away. I asked him not to take it. The money wasn't much more and would have uprooted our family. He decided to take it, put our house on the market, and travel back home on the weekends. Shortly after he took the job was the first time I cheated on him. I had been in contact with an ex-boyfriend from high school. I had no sexual attraction to him, it was truly just friendship. He was visiting my town and I agreed to go see a show with him. From the moment we saw each other again, sexual tension was high. We got drunk, I kissed him, and ended up sleeping with him that night. I knew it was wrong. I had no intention of it happening and the guilt was crushing. At the same time, it was exhilarating to be desired again. We continued to chat on Facebook, Skype, talk on the phone occasionally. I eventually began pushing him away and ignoring his sexual talk. And then, it was just over. We still would chat occasionally on Facebook, but it was always short and no hints of sex. I never intended to tell my husband. The next time it happened, a friend of a friend expressed interest. Our mutual friend said, "Stay away, she's married." Well, he didn't. We became Facebook friends, and eventually I slept with him too. This went on for about 2.5 months. He ended it because he wanted to start dating someone who was actually available. I didn't want it to end. I was so caught up in the bubble of being desired and fulfilled. We stayed friends and still spent a good deal of time together, though not sexually. My husband decided to check my internet history because he was suspicious of our friendship. He found evidence, confronted me, denied it at first, but I came clean about him. I didn't give all the details and we both went through the harrowing experience of him prying it all out of me. He decides to take me to a polygraph exam. I failed it, and we went through another round of him prying details out of me about the other affair. Now it's all out in the open. We have been going through counseling, and things are honestly better all the time. He is a more attentive father and husband, and I am being transparent and honest with him about everything. I let him check my phone records, texts, internet history. He has access to all my emails. I don't complain about this at all, and I understand it and am willing to be an open book. I also signed a post-nup that takes my name off the house and everything else we own. I know that probably wasn't a smart move, but I thought it would be a huge step in gaining his trust back. This has all happened over the past 7 months. Last week, he asked me to submit to another polygraph out of the blue. I am resistant to taking it because I feel like it's not constructive. It doesn't move us forward. He feels like there's something else I'm not telling him because he had to drag everything else out of me. I feel like if I take it, it's just going to hamper his healing and keep him from learning to trust again. I am terrified of failing it, though I will be telling the truth. I know that we will never be the same again. I make no excuses for my choices. They were wrong and I feel horrible. We are both mourning the death of our relationship and the death of what our relationship could have been. I truly believe that we love each other and want to be together and can have a new future. I don't know if we can do that if he doesn't take a leap of faith. Comments. Him needing another polygraph is a sign that he still doesn't think you are being open and honest with him, and he needs this to trust you. I know polygraphs aren't all that reliable, especially under the stress, but it's one test and it's only been 7 months since you were busted. You should discuss what else he needs to see in you to re-strengthen the trust and reaffirm that you're being honest. But if it comes down to this one test, take it. I'm not gonna lie, and I hate coming off as being so crass, but I will. Instead of having your husband force you to take a polygraph and continuing to lie until you finally tell him all the details, why don't you just come to the terms with the fact that you are a horrible person? First time, sure, write it off as a mistake. There was alcohol, etc., etc. But the second time, straight up whore. You will never get his trust back, and honestly, you don't deserve it.